Okay, here's a thought for you. What in the world could a living cell and a high-tech laser possibly have in common? Well, today we're diving into a pretty wild idea that connects them through these incredible little mazes that can actually bend time.
It really does sound like the start of a bad joke, doesn't it? I mean, seriously, what could possibly link the tiny, microscopic world of bacteria with the super precise, high tech world of lasers?
Well, it turns out the answer is all about shape. It's a fundamental design principle, this complex maze structure that shows up in both of these completely different worlds. And it shapes how signals travel, not just through space, but through time itself.
So, let's start our story at the absolute smallest scale you can imagine, deep inside a single bacterium. And not just any bacterium, but a special defensive one that lives inside insects, kind of like a tiny bodyguard.
So, scientists got in there with these incredibly powerful electron microscopes. And what they found wasn't just a random jumble of tubes. No, they saw these beautifully organized micro mazes. And the thinking is, their shape, their geometry, isn't just for decoration. It's functional. It's a critical part of how the cell defends itself by controlling how molecules and signals move around.
All right, now hang on, because we're about to make a huge leap. We're going from the nanoscale world of a cell all the way up to the world of optical engineering. Because it turns out scientists are building something that looks surprisingly similar.
And this right here is where these two completely separate worlds collide. On one side, you've got nature's tiny, nanoscale mazes inside bacteria, shaping how chemicals move. On the other, you have physicists literally engineering similar mazes onto chips to mess with pulses of light. By forcing light down all these different paths, they can actually make parts of a light pulse show up early while other parts arrive late.
They call this effect time folding. Now, before your brain goes straight to science fiction, let's be clear, this is not time travel. Nobody's breaking the laws of physics here. It's actually a really clever trick. The maze, with its mix of short and long paths, basically smears the light pulse out and then puts it back together in a new shape. This shifts the peak of the signal, making it look like it arrived early. It's all about reshaping, not rule breaking. So we have mazes in bacteria and we have mazes on chips, and they're both messing with how things travel. But how do we describe them with the same language? This is the big aha moment, where we find a single score, a single number, to unify these two very different worlds.
Okay, ingredient number one is the loop count. You can call it beta 1 if you want to be fancy. It's basically a simple way to measure how complex the layout is. You just count how many different ways you can go in a circle. You know, a straight line has 0 loops, a simple traffic circle has 1, a crazy city grid has a whole lot more.
Ingredient number two is the path length spread, or delta L. This is all about variety. What's the difference in distance between the fastest shortcut through the maze and the longest, most scenic route a signal could possibly take?
And the final piece of the puzzle is what we actually measure at the finish line, the time separation. So after the signal goes through the whole maze, what's the time gap between that early peak we talked about and the main late part of the signal?
And here is where it all comes together. We get this thing called the maze-coupled delay, or MCD. This one number brilliantly connects the maze's physical properties, its loops and its path differences, directly to the time delay it creates. You can think of it as an efficiency score for how well that maze turns space into time.
Now, this is super important to get straight. MCD is not a speed. Nothing is actually traveling at this velocity. It's much more like a rating or an efficiency score. It tells you how much geometric bang you're getting for your temporal buck. A high MCD means you have a maze that is really, really good at using its complex shape to create a big time delay.
Look, a beautiful equation is one thing, but in science, you have to be able to test it, right? And the really cool thing about this MCD concept is that it leads to some pretty simple, low-cost experiments that could prove it's right or prove it's wrong.
So here's one idea for an experiment. They call it the loop sweep. It's simple. You design 3 mazes that are basically identical, except for one thing, the number of loops. One has 1 loop, one has 3, one has 5. Then you just shine a light pulse through each one, measure the time delay, and calculate the MCD. So, what should happen?
Well, if the theory is solid, the result should look something like this. As you add more loops to the maze, the MCD value should go up right along with it. If it does, that's awesome. It's strong evidence for the idea.
And if it doesn't, well, that's just as interesting because it tells us the theory needs some work. And that right there is how science works.
Okay, so if these mazes are a kind of physical language that's written in geometry, then the next obvious question is who or what is reading it? Well, for the bacterium, one really powerful idea is that its maze acts as a temporal firewall. Think of it like a bouncer at a club. Imagine all these biochemical signals floating around inside the cell. A short, noisy spike, like a false alarm, would get smeared out and totally diluted as it tries to navigate the maze. But a long, persistent signal, the kind that indicates a real threat, that signal would make it through. The maze's geometry literally filters time.
And what's so cool is that this idea of reading geometry applies to all sorts of systems. Photons read the maze at the speed of light, which gives us those direct time measurements. But a little robot navigating a physical maze or a microbe swimming through a chemical one is reading the exact same geometric information just through its physical path. Even our own neurons are incredible readers of timing, which makes them another candidate for reading this kind of geometric code.
So if we can really understand and quantify this deep connection between geometry and time, what could we actually do with it? This is where the whole idea just gets incredibly exciting because it points towards some amazing future technologies.
I mean, we could use these mazes as a whole new kind of analog computer, one that does calculations based on its physical shape. We could engineer time sponges, materials that have an internal maze-like structure designed to absorb and buffer shocks, whether it's heat or sound or impact. We might even be able to design interfaces that use these principles to filter and shape sensory information before it even gets to our brain.
And that kind of brings us to the big final thought here. We've gone from the inside of a bacterium all the way to the frontiers of physics, and it's all connected by this powerful, simple idea of a maze. If geometry can shape time, that fundamentally changes how we think about designing, well, everything, from new materials to new computers, and it leaves us with this huge, profound question. What else can we build with the language of shape and space?